I'm Tom Mitzi, and today my guest is Pat Grant. Pat, welcome to Thousand Oaks Living History.
Thank you very much.
Pat, tell us, when did you move to the Conejo Valley and what brought you here?
We moved, my family and I moved to the Conejo Valley in 1964. And we moved because my husband was just a new employee with Rockwell International Science Center. And at that time, the Science Center was in Canoga Park, but they were building this huge facility in Lynn Ranch. And we knew that we wanted to live close to where he worked, so we moved down from Berkeley and moved to Canoga Park for a year to save up money to buy a home here. And that we visited the area first, but decided that, you know, this was a place that we could afford to live in, and it was close to work, so that was the time. And we bought a home in the New Meadows area and stayed there for 21 years, and then moved up the street a little bit to the Kevington area, and we're still there.
What are your earliest memories of the Conejo Valley?
I remember very few people. And I think at that time, if I'm remembering correctly, there were probably about 10,000 people in town. Oh, maybe 12, maybe even 15. But everyone knew everybody. And we moved to the New Meadows area because they had just built a brand new school. And our little girl, our oldest daughter, Karen, was starting kindergarten. And we looked at the school and thought, this is the most modern looking school. This must be a really progressive school, and just from the construction and the architecture of it. And we were right. She started, I think, 2 years after the school opened, and it was just, it was a wonderful school. So I remember Meadows School, and I remember the reason for moving into the New Meadows was because Meadows School was right there, and we'd be assured a place for her and the other two daughters that came along. But there were other memories too. I remember the Vaughn's opening. We had no supermarkets at that time when I moved. I remember Oakdale Market really well because I used to do all of my shopping down there on Thousand Oaks Boulevard in Oakdale Market. And I remember that one of the butchers, Mr. Peixoto, who used to pass out free bologna to our kids. They used to love to go shopping there. It was just kind of a hometown atmosphere. So I remember the flood in front of Lupi's when Thousand Oaks Boulevard was totally wiped out, and trying to find a way to get around that flooded Thousand Oaks Boulevard for a time. That was really a very traumatic because we lived right off of Herb's Road where the flooding was going on. And there are things I remember. Jungle Land. I remember my kids riding on elephants at Jungle Land. And then I think I have a very good memory for some of the other schools as they were built around the Conejo, because for most of my career I was in education, and that's a very vivid, very vivid memory for me.
How has Thousand Oaks changed?
Well, it's of course very much bigger now. It's changed in some ways for the better. I think I love the shopping in Thousand Oaks. When we first moved here for many years, there was nothing here. There weren't dress shops. There weren't home and garden shops. There were some nurseries around, as I remember. But everything that we bought, we went into the valley. Just everything. We never went the other way, up Oxnard Way. I'm not even sure that there was anything there. But whenever we shopped, it was to the valley, and it was an all-day trip, because at that time there was not the highway that's there now. It was 2 lanes in each direction. So it's changed in that way. And I love the shopping. I think that's just a real plus. I think Thousand Oaks still has a hometown quality, you know, a small town quality. People are still friendly. I recognize names all the time. And it may be because I was connected with the schools for so long, but I recognize names and people know each other, and I still think it's just a very friendly town, even though we've got greater numbers now. I would not live anywhere else. I mean, I've had the opportunity to move, and we're retired now, so we could move anywhere that we want to, but I wouldn't do that.
Mm-hmm. Pat, if you were going to describe Thousand Oaks to someone who'd never been here, what would you tell them?
I describe Thousand Oaks to people all the time because we travel a lot and people want to know where we are. And you know, as we travel, actually we travel worldwide, and generally with people from the United States, and people know Thousand Oaks. It used to be years ago that nobody knew, you know, you'd say, where are you from? Thousand Oaks. Nobody knew what or where Thousand Oaks was. And I think the Dallas Cowboys, with having had the Dallas Cowboys here for so many years, that really brought Thousand Oaks to the forefront. So people did then recognize the names. You know, I don't find that I have to describe Thousand Oaks to a lot of people. People already know it's a wonderful place. When I say I'm from Thousand Oaks, they say, oh, that is just such a neat area to live in. Whether they've been here or not, they know about it, and it's made a name for itself. But I would say in Thousand Oaks, if I had to describe Thousand Oaks to a person I didn't know at all, I would say something like it's a small town. It's a small town in Ventura County, halfway between Santa Barbara and Los Angeles, and it's a friendly town with neat people and lots of oak trees.
What's your most memorable experience living here?
Well, I guess it would be in the area of education. I think my experiences outside of raising a family would go to education, because I've been in a number of the schools that have been developed. Colina University, Cypress out in Newbury Park, Weathersfield, and Glenwood, just a number of schools. I can't think of a specific response to that question, but just in general, schools and education.
Mm-hmm. If you could change something about Thousand Oaks, anything, what would you change?
You know, I think that there are some things that need attention. If you're speaking of change in that respect, a lot is happening in affordable housing, but I'm very convinced that in this very affluent area in which we live, we still need affordable housing. I think it's very nice to have kids that have grown up in Thousand Oaks able to come back and purchase a home, and that's almost an impossibility now for a lot of them. Luckily, my kids have been able to do that, or at least one of my daughters has been able to do that, but I see that as an impossibility for a lot of young people. So I think we need to give some attention to affordable housing without pulling down our neighborhoods, and to me that's a very large priority.
Is there one person or one group that you think has had the biggest impact on Conejo Valley?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because I happen to this year be the chairperson of the Conejo Las Virgenes Future Foundation. And I've been connected with that group since my retirement in 1993. And you may or may not know this, but the Future Foundation is actually responsible for this site. They had a vision long before I became involved with them about having a place, according to Dr. Ray Olson, who was the founder of the Future Foundation, which was founded in 1972. He, along with a group of people here in Thousand Oaks, really pushed for a place for the arts. And it's made us, they've made this significant contribution by way of suggesting the idea to the city council and city councils around the area, and having it come to reality here. So the Future Foundation has worked in other areas, not only housing, but in transportation, and a lot with our young people in the community. For 14 years, 16 years now, they have sponsored Youth Congress. And this year, Youth Congress has come up with an idea of providing a venue for young people where they can go, hang out, have music, socialize, do that type of thing. As you know, it was before the City Council yesterday. And they're even looking at other areas between Calabasas and Newbury Park where something like this can happen, so that we won't only have one place, maybe we'll have several places where our young people, our teens from 15 to 19 can go out and have a good time and be safe. So we're working a lot with young people in that respect. Last year, Youth Congress came up with the idea of having a teen fair where they would make connections with people in volunteer organizations, because our young teens in the area wanted to volunteer, but they didn't know how to go about finding places that needed volunteers. So they developed a teen fair. They held it at Westlake High School this year, and we had about 25 organizations that need volunteers come to this teen fair, and it was a tremendous success. We had 200 kids come, find places to volunteer, and we had organizations that use volunteers grab onto these kids, and they're using them now. So that's Conejo Las Virgenes Future Foundation. So in response to your question, I'm just very enthusiastic about the group, because I see them as a group that's bringing about change, continual change in our area, with the idea of keeping the quality of life as it has always been, and they're doing a good job with it.
Well, that's great. That's great. What is the greatest treasure Thousand Oaks has to offer its residents?
I would say the open space. I live against open space. My backyard is open space, and it is amazing the number of animals, the wildlife that we see back there. A pair of eagles, hawks, bobcats, coyotes. It is just, it's just wonderful, and I just hope that they continue that open space concept around the city, because it just, it's something that's unique. And it's something that just makes Thousand Oaks seem as a rural, it has a rural character to it because of the open space. So I would say that that's definitely one of its greatest treasures. I think also this site, the theater site, is wonderful. For years, and 30 years, maybe 35 years, we had season tickets to the Los Angeles Civic Light Opera. And as soon as this venue was built, we gave those up, and we're extremely happy not having to drive in there, 6 to 8 times a year, and having it right here. I'm basically, when I'm here, I'm 10 minutes from my home, and it's wonderful. I love this complex. I also should point out that my daughter designed the logo for the theater. She is Cynthia Grant.
That's right.
Yes, that's my daughter, and
that's used everywhere.
Oh, I know.
The ads,
I know.
the brochures.
Right. Yeah, and she designed that as she was an architect, just a fledgling architect, and she now works for Appleton and Associates in Santa Monica. And she designed, I said, why don't you do something like that? So we dropped it, and she turned it in. I think it was on a trip someplace, but that's when she found out that, that was the one that was chosen. So we're very proud of that. I try to remember her each time I see the logo.
Well, you must see it all the time.
I do. And in the newspapers, too. So,
Do you have a personal motto that you live by?
Yeah, I really do. That was asked to me not too long ago, and basically my motto is one that you've heard a lot. Treat others like you want to be treated yourself. And I really do try to live by that motto through my work experience, through the volunteer experience that I do. So I think that's important. I try to pass it on to my children and pass it on to my grandchildren too.
How would you like to be remembered?
I would like to be remembered as a person who got things done, whether it was professionally or in a volunteer group, someone who has taken an idea and gone with it. And I would also like to be remembered as a nice person, someone who didn't who could interact with people positively rather than negatively. Yes.
Are there any questions that we haven't asked you that we should have?
I don't think so. No. No, I think I covered the gamut here.
Well, Pat, thank you very much for being our guest today on
Okay.
Thousand Oaks Living History.
Thank you.